Record. So I was talking about this. I'll just delete this out again. If you select it in object mode, which is your right mouse, then you can delete it. Well, what I was saying is if you hold your space bar down, you can see all these controls. If you get used to using them, and I haven't got used to using them as much, I do the one in the middle to go to the different camera views, front, perspective, right, top, left view, back view, bottom view. And this gets to be pretty, you do it without thinking if you use it a lot. And I do this one. Now, with this menu, there's a lot of stuff there. And sometimes I go to hotbox controls and just say hide all. And so for a beginner, it just opens this when you hit the space bar. And so you can still get to the different views. But I think that if you started, and there should be hotbox controls here. Let me find them right there. Hotbox control. I can say show all, or you could just show modeling or just show rigging. But let me try this again. Hotbox controls. Come on, there they are. And I'm just going to say show all. And so when I do this, you can see that this menu across the top is the same as the menu here. So if you got used to this, holding the space bar down, instead of going up to create and create one of these primitives, you could go right here to create, which is a little shorter distance. And you could get used to polygon primitives and make all these different shapes. Now, sphere, cube, cylinder, cone, torus is like a donut, a plane, a disc, a platonic solid. They have different sides. So like a dodecahedron, I don't remember all the names, pyramid, a prism, a pipe. So the helix is kind of an interesting one because it's like the spring on a car, and it's hard to get this shape another way. So I'm going to, we used to have to kind of make it, they added it, and it's very nice. So when I have these 4 windows open, you can actually tap, put your tool over the one you want to look at, and tap your space bar, and it goes to that window. Now, I like working in the perspective view. Most 3D programs, you kind of have to work in 2 or 3 views to get it to work. But in Maya, you can move things in this perspective view and see how this looks like a pipe that Superman bent. So here, when I have it selected, and that's selecting it with object mode, then we have this settings, and the scale 1:1 is 100% really. So if you did 2, and you can actually grab this and do 2, I did 3 and hit enter, it'll be 3 times as big. F will fit 1 object, and A will fit all objects. And when you first do this, you can click on this polyhelix here in my channel box, which I used to call it properties. And you can change some settings here if you want. Radius, if you click on it, you could type numbers in, but if you click on it here and go to the screen, you can use your middle mouse to change this radius. And so you can make some interesting shapes. Here, subdivision along the axis, you can change that. You can see you can make it more rounded, 24 segments. Now, if you look here under faces, it's 3,602. If you were doing it for a game, games want you to keep the polys low, and they might have a requirement for how many polygons this object has. And also games like things to be triangulated. So if I go here to mesh and I say triangulate, you'll notice it makes them all into triangles, and it doubles my face count. And the reason games want them to be triangles is triangles can never be non-planar or can never be not flat, because if I move this point here, it's still flat. It's flat this way. If I move the point here, it's flat, but it's this way. And the problem with quads, which are these four sides, I'm going to grab a face. Actually, I'm going to grab a vertex. If you grab a vertex here and you pull it too far by going W, notice these arrows, you can hit plus. Actually, it's the left and right. Well, it should be plus to make them bigger. Let me try this one more time. The brackets or plus? Plus makes them bigger in case you need them to be bigger. I'm going to hit F. And so if I move this around and I moved it until this was non-planar, which it's being stubborn for me, it would actually break this polygon. Let me see if I can grab a different one and make this break. See how it turned black there because it's inside out? It actually get broken because they're no longer flat. They're bent in an odd way. So that's why games like triangles. I like modeling in quads because it's less vertices, less polygons to deal with. So I'm going to go object mode here. I'm using my right mouse to do that. You press it and hold it. And so I can go in here in a polyhelix. We can change these subdivisions of the coil. And you see that you can make this into a, hitting F, a different shape. If you wanted it to look different, it almost looks like a water slide kind of thing. Now, you can take these, and if you take different faces and you delete them, you can actually go inside this shape and you can move a camera going down it. Now, the problem with this is if you look in there, now you can actually see the inside, but sometimes the polygons are backwards. So normally an object like a sphere, you can see it from the outside, but when the inside looking out, you can't see it. If I grab all these faces, we can actually, they call them normals, which is the direction you can see things. And if I go to mesh and I go mesh display, I can change the normals and I can go and reverse them. And you'll see that this looks black. But from the inside, if you had a camera that went down this pipeline on the inside and you moved around this, animated it going through the center, then you could definitely see it from the inside. Now it's interesting when we render these things up. That's the flamingo. I threw some water on him. So I'm going to work on him.
That turned out really good.
Yeah, well, I'll play with it a little more and I'll show you. There were a couple of things I did wrong. Before you bind the skin, you really need to delete the history, because now when I move him, his head disappears because it's got some history associated with it. And you don't want the flamingo's head to disappear. So notice this is not rendering at all. Now, it could be a couple things. When we render things, we need to have some lights. Yeah, we need lights. So here under rendering, I could throw in a directional light. And here, if I hit just 7, you can see the light view. And if we go E and we rotate it, you can see the light on it. But the normals are reversed. So it's giving us just the inside of the tube, which is interesting. But if you went inside the tube itself, if there was light in there, you could actually see the inside of the tube. There's just no light in there right now. So if I take this and I grab faces and I reverse them, then up. Maybe I need to reverse them again, faces. Let's display, reverse. The other thing you have to think about when you're doing this, see how dark it is? There's different rendering style on this little gear. And my bet is that it's on Arnold. And Maya software takes a lot less light. So let me clear this for just a second. I'm going to go new. Hello, Audrey.
Hi.
Hi, Audrey. The other two people here are Yulia and Joe, and they do 3D animation with me. Oops, error. Are you Joe and Yulia still here?
Yes, I'm still here.
Okay, I just didn't see it. Okay, so basically we're talking about basics in Maya. So I'm going to go here and I'm going to go to poly modeling and I'll pick one of these shapes. They call them primitive shapes. Here I'm going to do a cube. And so the cube is here. With the Alt key, I can use my middle mouse and push it down. If I roller it, I can zoom in and out. But if I push down, I can move this around so we can see it. With my right mouse, I can zoom in and out. I like moving the mouse forward and backward, but right and left also works. And with the left mouse, I can rotate around this. Now, when you're rotating things, Z is depth. So a lot of times you want to try to keep the Z away from you or towards you actually, because that's Z positive when it's towards you down here. Z is depth, X is sideways, and Y is up and down. Now, this is a cube. We could certainly make something out of it. I could make it into a dice that we could roll. It could be a drinking glass if I did some things to it. But manipulating it and changing it in different ways is another way of doing things. So if I hold my right mouse over it and I go to vertices, which are the little points that make up the corners, I can grab those. And with Q, W, E, R is resize, and it gives me this handle, and I can resize the top of this and change its shape. So this could be a planter. It could be a lampshade if you turned it this way. It could be a drinking glass that has sharp corners. I think it would be good if you wanted to pour things out of it. I made a vase once that was a triangular and the bottom shape had like a, you know how they have that round plate on the bottom to catch the water, but I made it angled in. And so when you tipped it, the water didn't spill out unless you went to the corner and poured it out. So it was kind of like a spout. And I really liked that design. So when we have these objects, our job is to decide how to make things, because maybe your client wants an airplane, maybe your client wants something else. So if I hold my mouse down over it, I can go to faces, which are these flat areas. And if I take this one, this is my favorite tool here, the extrude tool. I can click on it, click the round circle so it matches, called global. And then I can click on the cube and go to the center. See how I can make that smaller? So if this was a drinking glass, I could give it a little bit of a lip. And then I could extrude it again and push it down. Notice how it's coming through. So if I click the cube, I can adjust it, bring it in, and you can see that I can make this planter, lampshade, glass that you could drink out of the corners. It makes maybe a Star Trek kind of glass now. So I like that extrude tool. It lets me make different shapes. I think what I'm going to do is review making an airplane, a submarine, or a I'm going to object mode here and deleting this. Airplane, submarine, or a Zeppelin, they're all pretty much the same, or a rocket ship. Any votes on what we should make? Joe, Audrey, Yulia, what should we make?
I don't know.
I'm gonna make a,
vote airplane. Oh, okay.
I'm gonna make a spaceship. So I'm gonna make the sphere right here. And so if the sphere is elongated, that's the body of the spaceship. So here I can go to X, Y, Z. Y is the up one. And if I want it 3 times as tall, it's 300% is 3. And that starts to look like a rocket ship, okay? Starts to, looks like a football. And so I can do a few other things to this. I'm holding my space bar down so I can go to the right view. So I look at it straight on. If I grabbed these faces here, and then I went W, I could move them up. And it starts to make this look maybe a little bit like a ray gun or something different. And I could go R and resize them a bit. So it just gave it a bit of a pointy nose, all right? Now I could use the extrude tool to make a rocket nozzle, but which one of these tools up here called primitives would look like a rocket nozzle where the fuel comes out of the jet or the rocket blade flame comes out of? Anybody, which one? Looks like a nozzle. A rocket nozzle. I'm giving you a clue.
The pointy one.
The cone. The cone looks like a rocket nozzle. So I click on it. It gives me a cone. And they sometimes go inside each other, which is, you can lose them, but if you go to wireframe, you can see them. I'm going to go W and move this down. So that looks like a rocket nozzle on the end of my rocket. Now, rocket nozzles, I'm holding the space bar to go to perspective. How's it going, Audrey? Enjoying it?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so with this rocket nozzle, I think it's a little wide on the base. If I hold my right mouse, I can go to base, click here, and I can go R and just make it a little smaller from the middle. And then if I use this extrude tool, click the global symbol, I can move it down a little bit to give it a little bit of a lip there. And then I can extrude it again, this tool. And if I click the cube on the outside, I can go to the center. See how it gives it an edge? And then I can go here again and push it in. So I'm starting to shape it. In this case, it's sticking through, which is not good. I can shape it. And if you look at this, it looks like a rocket nozzle. And we can color that different colors. Now, I'm going to take this body of the spaceship and I'll hit Control D. On a Macintosh, that's Command D. And I'll go W. Whenever you duplicate something, you want to move it immediately because it's exactly on top of the other. And you can kind of see these little checkers here. And I don't see it as much. I don't think it duplicated it. Let me move it. Nope. So I have to Control D. See how the checker mark, because they're on top of each other and it confuses Maya a little bit. And so I'm going to resize this going R and make it look like the cabin of the spaceship. Now in Star Wars, they had these little speeders where they had the cabin at the back or they had the cabin at the front. So you can use W to move it. So Q, W, E, R. W is move, E is rotate, R is resize, and Q just deselects the tool. Sometimes it gets in the way. So W, I can move this further forward. It could be weird. It could be sticking out, or I can move it further back. Can move it up. I could even make it a little narrower by hitting R. That one's resize, makes sense. And you can see you start to make this shape of a spaceship kind of thing. Now, I'm going to hit F to make it fit and rotate it. Now, most spaceships need to have little fins, especially if they have to fly through the atmosphere. I'm going to take a sphere. Now, this sphere, I'm going to, I think I will hide these. I'm using the shift key to select them. Sometimes the tool gets in the way, so I have to hit Q. And under display, I can say hide selection. I don't like these triangles on the end of this sphere. They give me some problems sometimes. So I'm going to rotate this sphere on the X, and that's the channel box here, 90 degrees. So I put them on the ends because I want this to be like a wing. R, resizes, and I'll go here and here, and I'll make it look like a surfboard. So now if I go display, show all, then I can go W, move this to the back. That can be like my rudder. Let me go R with it and make it a little narrower. And then I could duplicate this, Control D, and then E and rotate it here. And I could rotate this 90 degrees on the Y-axis like this rod. And you could see I started to make a spaceship up. It's not quite right. It's not quite 90. I typed 80, 90, enter. And you can see that I made a spaceship that looks kind of Star Wars-esque. If you hit F, you can use your Alt key and the left mouse to rotate around it and look at it. Now, maybe you want a spaceship that has more fins in the back, make it look more Buck Rogers-ish. There is a duplicate, and I'm going to, with this freeze transformations, to reset these numbers. It's under modify freeze transformations. Sometimes it gives us problems if you don't freeze it. But under edit, duplicate special, I can tell it that I want to have, let's say I want 3 of these. What's 360 divided by 3?
120.
120, good. So we do our math here. And so I want 3, I already have 1, I'm going to say 2. So I want to rotate these, and I want to rotate them on the Y axis. That's this one going this way. So it's X, Y, Z. They don't put the numbers. It's always X, Y, Z. And I want to go 120. And I want to scale it the same, get 2 duplicates and apply. And you can see now that I have these 6 fins. They're actually just 3 going all the way through. I think that looks more interesting. So what have I done lately?
Say, or set a project.
Yes, we better save. And I'll save it into the Flamingo because that's set up, and we'll talk more about that later. But if I save this scene, it's going to go into my Flamingo folder, and I can name it. I'll just call it Rocket. Rocket space. And I will save that. Now, I think that it would be neat to have these fins at the front also. So notice the tool is kind of getting in the way. So if you hit Q, deselects it, and I can get these other 3. Under mesh, there's a thing called combine. It's like grouping them. Then I can go Control D. I like that Control D. It duplicates things, but you have to move them and move them up here. Now, I think that's too big and it gets in the way of the pilot's vision. So I'm going to go R, go right to the center. Now, when I moved this, I used the arrowhead. So it only moves in this direction. So, I mean, you could put it somewhere in here. That's right through the middle of the cabin. I could go here and I could rotate this. What's half of 120? That's 50, 60. So if I rotate this 60 along the Y axis, rotate 60, try that again. I think I have to rotate 30 because I only want to go half. And so now that gives the pilot a way of seeing forward. Now it's offset from the other, but I think that looks very interesting. Now we could do this duplicate special. And it's under edit. Go to the checkbox, which opens the dialog. And I want 2 of these. I can go here, edit, reset. So I want 2 more of these, 2, but I don't want them to rotate. I want them to move, and I want them to move on this axis, which is the Y axis. It's X, Y, Z, R, G, B, so Y is green. And so the green axis here, and I want them to move on the positive, Y positive. And so here, X, Y, 1 would be 1 grid square. So I'm going to go 0.5. And then I wanted them to scale down each time, 0.8. Just guessing. If I don't like it, I can undo it. Maya should have unlimited undos if it's set that way, but most of the time it's set to 20. The unlimited undos bogs things down sometimes, but some people like that. And so I'm going to apply, and it moved them forward, and see how it made a really interesting look. I don't think it moved them far enough forward because I wanted some separation between them. But do we like the way this looks? Audrey, do you like the way this looks?
I mean, yeah, it looks great.
Or do you think they should be further forward? I will do this one, but then what I'll do is I'll click here and I'll go Control Z twice, and I'll try it. I'll go point, the movement, I'll go point, I think I'll go 0.7 and see what it looks like, and we'll apply it. Do you like that one better, or do you like the other one? This looks a little more like shark teeth to me.
I think this one looks good.
Okay, so that way we can do that, and then we can save. I like to save scene as and just put a 2 here. So if I mess up, I can come back. And so we have this little rocket. Now it's pointing straight up. If you're going to blast off straight up, that's fine, but we could rotate the whole thing. But before we do that, we want to start coloring this. Now, the hypershade is a little bit of a pain, but it's here. In other 3D programs, they call it a shader. And I find that it's a little awkward when this is so big. So you can kind of dock it in things, but then it's a little bit of a pain too. I think if I scroll down here, let me go ahead and close it. Close tab, that's the right mouse. And I'll try it one more time. Yeah, it gets docked in here, which means it's stuck in the other ones. And I'll let it go. Yeah, I'm docking it again. Trying to get it so it's not docked. Maybe up here I'll do it. We have these different materials, but I like this create. And there's a few of these that really work well. It just takes a little while to get used to them. So here, I like the ones that seem to work pretty well are blend. Anastrophics kind of looks like a metal. So I'll do anastrophic. And when I do, it opens up in this attributes editor. And in this attributes editor, I can call this, the body of a spaceship is called hull. And I'm going to hit enter. And then I can pick a color. I'll double click. And what color do you think this should be, Julia? Julia?
Blue?
Blue, we want to be a blue, good. Dark blue, medium blue, light blue, purplish.
Dark blue.
Okay, so here's the blue. And if we go with a dark blue, which you can move into here, the one thing about a dark blue is you're not going to see it very well in space. But did either of you, Joe or Yulia, I don't think Audrey watched Babylon 5. It was a long time ago. Their ships were very dark. And the way you saw them is they were silhouetted against a black hole or silhouetted against a supernova or silhouetted against the Horsehead Nebula. And that's how you saw them. So you really didn't see the details. So a dark ship like this could be very camouflage, which would be good. Now, if it's too dark when we're rendering it, we can always change it. But there it is. And in Hypershade, when you go back here to the browser, you'll see it. And we can, I'm going to zoom in here a little bit. And I can middle mouse, drag this and drop it on the hull and make it look blue. And see the shine on this. We were talking about the light source. We haven't talked about lights as much, but it's got a nice shine. I like the anastrophic. It makes it look a little metal. So I'm going to take this anastrophic and I'm going to duplicate it, Control D. It's called hull 1. I'm going to call it wings. Maybe on a spaceship, they'd be called fins or something like that, but I'll double click and it's selected and I'll go to color and I'll change it. What color should these be, Joe?
Maybe yellow.
I like the yellow. It kind of negates our camouflage, but that's okay. And we'll move here. And you can pick this picker to get a kind of a pure yellow. And then we can take that and drag it to the fins, middle mouse. And do we want the front fins to be the same color? I think so. Middle mouse, drag and drop on the front fins. There we are.
I bet it looks pretty cool from the front view, though, coming at you.
No, I bet you it does. Let's go here and look at it. And I think this ship, maybe we don't have a cabin on it and this ship likes to spin, or maybe these fins rotate it all the time as it's attacking. There was one in the Star Trek movie, the new Star Trek with the first new Star Trek. Spock's ship spun like that. Oh, it's kind of neat. So now this cabin, I don't want it to look metallic. So I'll go here to create. And the thongs have a nice shine like it would be plexiglass or glass. Most likely plexiglass, which is an acrylic plastic. I'll double click on that. And so I'll call this cabin. And so cabin, and this color's fine. I think in space, if you've ever saw the Apollo astronauts, they actually had a thin layer of gold, which insulates from the heat and the cold. You can actually pound gold so thin you can see through it. And that's one reason some of the things are expensive. Stealth fighters have the gold in the canopy. It keeps the radar from going in and seeing the sharp edges inside. You want it to see the edges on the outside, which reflect the radar in different directions and not back to the radar. So here I'm going to pick a yellowish color, maybe a little orange on the orange side. I just like orange. And again, you can change these. I'm pulling this down here. Now this palette, you have to say done, and I don't like it being at the bottom because I never see it and I don't say done and then it doesn't work. So this cabin could be orange, but we want it, and I'm scooting down to be, I'm going to make it a little reflective. And we want it down here to be transparent. So there's some transparency and there's some translucency, but I'm looking for transparent here. And we can pull this and you can see with the checkerboard how transparent it actually is. With this, there's also a diffuse or a specular color. Specular color is another color that bounces off of things. I like this kind of bright, it's kind of neat. And we can pick a different color for the specular color. It could be blue. And so this will have a hint of blue in it. And I'm going to say done. So this one, I can then go back to my, where is it? It's down here, Hypershade. And I can go here and I can take it under browser and drag this. Now this is applying it to the whole object. And I'm going to close the Hypershade for now. And I'll turn off this attribute editor so we can see this. Now, the problem with this is there's no hole in there for a cabin, which we could put a hole in there, but it has a nice reflectivity to it. And depending upon how I render it, which is here, this gear, and I'm using Arnold. No, I don't like Arnold, but Arnold's great for light effects and fogs. I've got to work on Arnold more, but Maya software. And in Maya software, I'm going to go to a higher quality. And one thing that really does reflections well is this ray tracing, because it traces the light rays. Now, this ship, if I hit just the number 4, it shows what it looks like in wireframe, which is a neat look. Oh, there's an extra cab inside. Oh no, that's just the shape of the cabin. Good, I like that. And 5 shows it in a solid view with colors. And 6 would show if I had a Photoshop image wrapped around it. But 7 is the light view. Audrey, why do you think this is black if this is the view of the lights?
There isn't any light.
There isn't any light because I have to go into rendering and add lights. Now this one's a directional light, which is like the sun coming down. I'm going to move it up here. I like making it a little larger by hitting R just so I can see it better. But that's the direction of the light. And so see how it's dark on the bottom and the top is lit. And if I go E, I can rotate this light and give it a bit of an angle, a dramatic effect. Now, if this was out in space, we wouldn't have any ambient light, which is this one. Ambient light is the light that bounces off of things. But in the Star Trek series, in the Star Trek movies, they normally had the ship around a planet. So they'd have a little ambient light because the light would be coming off the planet or off the sun to light this. Because if I rendered this here, you could see it's pretty dark, almost what they call film noir, which means black. So in old Renaissance painting, they would call this chiaroscuro, which they use darks and lights. And it looks pretty dramatic, but I don't get to see the fins at all. So if I add an ambient light, it's too bright now because the ambient light's set at 100%. Ambient light should probably be only about 0.3. So in a lot of movies like King Kong and the early one with Jack Black, I don't know if you've seen that one, Audrey. Have you seen it, Joe?
Yes.
Yes. They have the ambient light way too high. The bottoms of the airplanes, they see all this detail. Well, they spent all the time making this airplane so super accurate. They didn't want the ambient light to be low, so you didn't get to see the detail. In some shark movies, they do that. The bottom of the shark's all lit up so you can see the gills and the roughness, but the ambient light's way too high. If you look underneath a car, it's normally pretty dark. So I never go more than 0.3. And I know it's not going to show off the detail of the bottom of the ship, but it's going to look more accurate. I'll click here and then, so where we select it and I'll render it. And you can see that this ambient light's giving me enough light to see the edges of my ship. And with this, when I render it, I can actually save this file. And I can save it as a JPEG, which is what they use for web, but I could save it as a Photoshop document. There's a few other choices here, but the Photoshop document has a thing called an alpha channel, which drops this background out. So if I saved it as Photoshop, I could drop the background out and put a picture of New York skyline behind this. Or I could put a picture of Mars behind this. It would just be a still image, but I could do that. Would you like to see that? Because I can open Photoshop real quick. Or do you just get the concept?
I'm cool with seeing it, whatever everybody wants.
Okay, I'm going to save this. And this is just a still image. Save image. I'm going to save it as a PSD Photoshop document. I'm going to call it, what should we call this rocket, Yulia?
I don't know, Rocket One.
Rocket One. Let's come up with something creative, Yulia. I want you to use your brain. You're very smart.
I can't.
Well, it's blue and it's yellow. We could call it a blue jacket, like a bumblebee. We have yellow jackets and blue jackets. What would you call it, Audrey?
I don't know what I would call it, honestly.
Okay, so here's the thing. When we start using our brains, and even if you came up with something and you said, call it Rover, because it's like a dog, but it's roving all over the place, then you're starting to create, use your creativity. So the more we can come up with different stupid names, and they don't have to be good names. I'm not being critical. Joe, what'd you call it, Joe? I'm going to be critical with Joe. No,
Well, it kind of has those teeth. We call it the Bluetooth or Bluetooth.
it could be called Bluetooth. That's really a cool name. I like that. Or something about a shark, but let's call it Bluetooth. So I'm going to save this file and call it Bluetooth.
Because ironically, the fins are yellow.
Yeah, well, that's because bad dental care. But anyway, I'm going to the desktop and saving this as a PSD. Now I need to go over here and open Photoshop and then share Photoshop. So I'm going to go and I need to open Photoshop. There it is. And then once it opens, I can stop the share here. Stop the share. Now, Joe, you can only go for about an hour.
Yeah, so I'll have to drop out around 8:30.
8:30, that's fine. So I'm just going to go here and I'm going to say new share. And I've got Photoshop open here. It looks like I opened it twice. And I'll go, can you see Photoshop, everyone?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
good, good. I like that. And I just need to check because sometimes it doesn't do it. I'm gonna open that file. And it's on the desktop. So I called it, Joe called it Bluetooth. And there it is. So we can open this in Photoshop. See how the background is transparent? Because Photoshop, it has an alpha channel, which means a selection. And that selection is here, background transparency. So see how the marching ants are around there. So we can drop the background out. It's already dropped out. And control, let me zoom out of this, control minus. So what background do we want to put behind this, Audrey? You were telling me something else earlier that I should have behind Space Mouse. What was it?
A black hole.
A black hole. So the reason I'm asking you these things, because I want you to kind of start thinking. And the more you start thinking, the quicker it comes, the more creative you become. And the more creative you become, the more interesting you are as an artist. And you can do a lot of interesting things. I love being creative. I think it's one of my better suits. I think I'm a good teacher, but I think I'm even better with creative. Now I'm going to go to the internet and I'm not going to share that with you because I'm just going to find a black hole that I could drop in here. So I'm just Googling it and I'll go black hole. Now, if you really wanted to find one that was copyright free, you can go to black hole and then under images, you can say usage rights and you can find one that you were, that you could use. If it's a picture from NASA, black holes, anything from NASA we can use. We paid for them with our tax dollars. Not you,
Yeah.
not you, Audrey. You haven't paid any tax dollars yet, but your father has. So we can use it. So I'm going to type black hole. I think that's probably one word. Is it one word or two words? I don't know. I'm going there. And I'm going to go images. And so they have images of a black hole. I like this one because there's a lot of orange. I'm using my right mouse to save the image. And I'm going to save it as a JPEG on the desktop. I'm going to call it black hole. It's called black hole light eject Dan Wilkins. So obviously Dan Wilkins took this, did this animation or something. Doesn't look like a real picture. And save it. And then I'm going to share. And I'm going to share the screen for Photoshop. And then I'm going to file and open the black hole, which should be on the desktop and should be under B's or black hole. There it is. Opened it. And I can either take this and drag it into the other one, or I can control A, copy it, Command C, Command V. Now there's a problem with this. Who knows what the problem is?
Layers.
It's layered and the black hole's on top, but we want the black hole to be underneath. And there's my ship with the black hole. Now, since this has an alpha channel, we can move the ship around. Now, if I took this into Premiere or After Effects or a video editing program, even iMovie, we can move this around like this. That sort of thing. And then we could make this get smaller and it could be starting to spin and then get sucked into the black hole. And then it could even be stretched. Let's see, to stretch this, I have to use, we have to distort it. This should let me distort it. Let me see if I have to do the Alt key. Nope, that's doing it straight. Let me try the Shift key. Distort it and it could get all stretched right before it went in the black hole. And its transparency could go thinner and thinner until it disappeared into the black hole. So fortunately, Photoshop has some undos. I can undo it. And then I can paste that back in and put it below this layer. So just doing that one still image, we could get a whole lot of mileage out of this, especially if we had some neat music. I have a CD with Star Trek music, but it's copyrighted. Now, you can't make this turn because it's just one image, but you could do a bunch of images, but we can actually animate it turning and spinning and doing its different thing. So I'm going to save this. And just it's saved. And I think it's called Black Hole. So we'll quit out of Photoshop. I will share back to Maya. And we'll go on. So this is Maya and this is rendered. So I need to close the render view. Yep, cancel. Why can't I close this? I need to close it. There it is. Good. And I'll click on this attribute editor to get it bigger. Now, all this is working nicely. One thing that's kind of interesting with the different textures is if I go here, and you got about 4 minutes, Joe. You got your outside chores done. I did a really neat thing for my dragon fruit. I made a signpost that says Mexico City and different things for it to climb up and go over. So it looks like one of those MASH signposts. It's got Hanoi, so many kilometers, Mexico City. I made it as if it was in Guadalajara, which is where dragon fruit normally are from, in LA and El Paso. So it's kind of neat.
Oh, that sounds awesome. Yeah, what I meant by chores.
I'll text you a picture. So I've been just having fun. But here, we have a reflection here, okay, reflectivity, and we have reflective color. So if I go into reflective color and just for fun, go here, reflective color, let me scoot down, reflective color, boom, it's over there. I can use a file, get the file, and I can find my black hole on the desktop. Normally you save this in source images, but I'm just going to go here to desktop and find black hole. And that's what's going to be reflected on the canopy. And so if I zoom in on this and I close this, now sometimes it doesn't take the first time, I have to do it again. But if I have the ray tracing on and I render it, you can see there's a black hole here. Let me zoom in a little more on it. And a little more on. Okay, there we are. And let's see if I can rotate it to the side a bit. So you can see it's actually reflecting it in the canopy, depending upon how reflective this is.
See the danger approach.
Yes, one last thing, let me close this, is this canopy. If I go to my Hypershade, which I think is already open, let me open it again just to make sure. Where's my Hypershade? It's hiding somewhere. Yeah, I think I'm going to set up another monitor. I have another TV. So I'm going to save this really quick. And Hypershade should be, oh, it's down here somewhere. It's got to be. Where is it? There it is. This one right here. That's why I was having problems. If I double click on this cabin, we can put a bump on this canopy. And the bump I'd like to use, scooting this down, and it should say bump map. Color, diffuse, reflectivity, bump map. Click on the checkerboard, get the file up. I'm not going to use a file. I'm going to use this grid for the bump. And if you look at it now, you can see the lines on it. And I got lucky with the size. See how that looks like the cabin and where it opens? I think this line is not quite in the right position. It's a little asymmetrical. But that bump makes it bump up or down. And I can adjust it a little bit, but I think that makes it look really nice.
Hey, Doug,
Yes,
care if I leave now?
please, Audrey, you can leave whenever you want. Thank you,
Okay.
Audrey. Bye-bye.
And it's also 8:30.
Yep, it's also 8:30 for Joe. Julia, do you want to do a little more?
No, I have to go. My mom traveled back in Ukraine. I have to call her.
I think you should. That's important. All right,
Bye.
I'm going to save this. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you, Doug.
All right,
Thank you,
bye-bye.
Doug. Bye.
See you next week.
All right, no problem.